Dear friends, welcome back to another episode of The Informant. Today we're diving into a highly dangerous situation unfolding in the Middle East, Israel's bold attack on Iran. We'll learn about the targets that were struck, the message Israel intended to send to Tehran, and Iran's promise of retaliation, which came as a response to an earlier Israeli offensive. The cycle of attacks and counterattacks between these two nations suggests an imminent, all-out conflict in the Middle East. But before we dive in, make sure you're subscribed to the channel with notifications turned on. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. To fully grasp the weight of Israel's latest offensive on Iran, we must first consider the deep-seated tensions and strategic motives behind their rivalry. Backed by Western allies, particularly the United States, Israel has consistently viewed Iran's nuclear ambitions and military buildup as severe threats. For its part, Iran, ever since the 1979 Islamic Revolution, has positioned itself in direct opposition to what it calls Western imperialism, with an anti-Israel stance embedded in its foreign policy. In recent decades, Iran has expanded its influence in the region, building alliances with militant groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon and factions in Gaza. These groups operate as extensions of Iran's power, maintaining constant pressure on Israel and enabling Iran to strike indirectly. Now, let's focus on the specifics of Israel's operation in Iran on the night of October 25 to 26, 2024. According to multiple reports and the Israeli Defense Forces (IDF), the attack was launched in two waves, aiming to degrade Iran's response capabilities and neutralize any immediate counterattack. The initial wave targeted Iranian air defenses, paving the way for a secondary strike on sensitive military sites. This approach highlights the advanced planning and tactical precision of Israel's military, prioritizing the elimination of threats to its jets. With Iranian defenses weakened, Israel's second wave focused on key military bases and missile and drone production centers. These facilities play a crucial role in Iran's regional power projection, supplying arms to allies like Hezbollah and, potentially, to Russia. By hitting these specific sites, Israel not only aims to diminish Iran's military strength, but also curbs its influence in proxy conflicts from Syria to Iraq, and even Ukraine. So far, the extent of damage from the Israeli strikes remains unclear. Nevertheless, this attack sends a clear message about Israel's intelligence capabilities and strategic reach. Unlike Iran's recent long-range missile attack on Israel, Israel's operation involved over 100 fighter jets, breaching Iran's airspace and returning safely. This act demonstrated to Iran that Israel can bypass its air defenses and reach even highly secure targets, including Tehran. Significantly, Israel avoided striking nuclear facilities, perhaps to avert an escalation that could plunge the Middle East into full-scale war. Yet, how are other nations reacting to this aggressive strike? U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin underscored America's unwavering commitment to Israel's security. This strong U.S. backing not only reinforces Israel's regional standing, but also warns Iran and other regional players that any aggression toward Israel could draw in the American military machine. This American support complicates matters, as some analysts speculate it may provoke a more aggressive Iranian response. Iran could respond indirectly, using proxies in Lebanon, Syria, or Yemen to target Israel or its allies. Meanwhile, the British Prime Minister issued a cautious statement urging Iran to exercise restraint while recognizing Israel's right to self-defense. Even Saudi Arabia, a longtime rival of Iran, publicly condemned Israel's actions, an unusual stance that reveals its concern over regional stability and the potential risk to Saudi-Israel peace efforts. What are the strategic implications of this conflict, and what might the future hold for Israel-Iran relations and the broader Middle East? Israel's assault on Iran's military infrastructure disrupts the region's balance of power. Temporarily, Iran's ability to project military strength is weakened, and its missile and drone production could take weeks to recover depending on the damage. While it's hard to assess the full impact at this stage, Israel's success in executing high-precision strikes in heavily fortified Iranian airspace strengthens its standing as both a military powerhouse and a dependable ally for the US and Europe. Western nations generally support actions that dismantle Iranian weapons, especially considering their use in the Ukraine conflict. This attack also tests Iran's alliance with Russia, given that many Iranian-made drones are supplied to Russian forces. By crippling these production facilities, Israel indirectly undermines Russia's war effort in Ukraine. With its defense production hindered, Iran might resort to indirect attacks via allied groups. Israel's borders with Syria and Lebanon are on alert, as any aggression from these areas could prompt a fierce Israeli response, risking a broader Middle Eastern conflict. The recent Israeli attacks stem from a series of targeted operations over the past few weeks, with Israel reportedly responsible for eliminating key figures in the anti-Israel coalition, including Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh, Hezbollah's Hassan Nasrallah, and Iranian Revolutionary Guard commander Abbas Nafan. While Iran has downplayed the extent of the damage, it has declared its right to defend against acts of aggression. Experts note Iran's careful phrasing, as terms like duty and right hint at Tehran's internal struggle, maintaining an image of strength without provoking a larger war. Such rhetoric suggests Iran may be weighing its options, opting to appear resolute while refraining from further escalation. For now, the U.S. played a key role in urging Israel toward measured retaliation, aligning with a broader American strategy to prevent Middle Eastern allies from igniting a regional conflict. Washington's recent military buildup in the area has also acted as a deterrent, signaling to Iran that direct confrontation would be met with a formidable response. Western allies, including the UK, have voiced concerns over a possible cycle of retaliations. A spiraling Middle Eastern conflict not only threatens regional stability, but also could jeopardize global trade, especially given Iran's control over the strategic Strait of Hormuz. Allies have pressed both Israel and Iran to consider diplomatic solutions, emphasizing the global interest in regional stability. Whether this diplomatic pressure will yield results is uncertain, given the deep-rooted hostility between these two powers. Iran's government faces a delicate balance between projecting strength domestically and meeting international expectations. How Iran navigates this will shape not only its ongoing clash with Israel, but also its future diplomatic engagements with global powers like the US, the EU, and Russia. This tension highlights Iran's pivotal role in Middle Eastern geopolitics, especially as it continues to support anti-Israel allies in Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, and Yemen. What we're witnessing is a war of retaliation, where each side meticulously calibrates its responses to avoid all-out war. Both Israel and Iran operate within unspoken rules, knowing that a miscalculated escalation could drag their allies into a brutal regional conflict. Israel's selective targeting, avoiding nuclear or oil facilities, reflects this strategy. Both nations are acutely aware that full-scale war could destabilize the Middle East, drawing in global powers and wreaking havoc on the region. Iran has stated it will respond proportionally, though what that means remains unclear. Observers suggest Iran may opt for indirect action, perhaps mobilizing Hezbollah or Iraqi militias to strike Israeli or American interests. This approach allows Iran to retaliate without directly engaging Israel, thus sidestepping a broader conflict. However, such moves carry their own risks, potentially drawing in Saudi Arabia and even Russia, whose interests are tied to regional stability. The coming weeks will be pivotal in determining whether Israel and Iran will de-escalate or continue their cycle of retaliation. Western diplomatic pressure is at an all-time high, though history reminds us that the Middle East is a region where unforeseen decisions can rapidly alter the landscape. Israel's strike on Iran marks a turning point in Middle Eastern geopolitics, underlining Israel's military might while challenging Iran and its regional influence network. This situation illustrates how regional rivalries can have far-reaching consequences, potentially triggering global conflicts. Vigilance and strategic caution are Israel's best defenses right now. With a focus on targeted retaliation that minimizes harm to sensitive civilian and infrastructure sites, Israel signals its commitment to security without provoking all-out war. The message is clear: any threat will be met with decisive action, but escalation will be avoided where possible. We'll continue tracking every development in this intense standoff and bringing you updates. If you value independent journalism and want to support our work, consider buying us a coffee using the QR code on your screen. Your contributions are vital to help us keep delivering in-depth analysis and high-quality insights. Stay tuned for more updates, and don't forget to subscribe to The Informant for the latest news on the world's most urgent geopolitical issues.